Hello. Oh, we are not live on Facebook. Let's try this again.
We're having some great technical fun this time
We
around, aren't
are.
we?
All right. Are we gonna get a green check?
Come here.
All right. I think.
Whoop, whoop. Add a,
All right.
so it signed me out of all of the emails.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Um, we're not even wearing our. I'm not even
I got
wearing my
mine.
mask. Yep.
I got
Oh
mine.
goodness.
Oh, I got a weird hair thing going on. Now look at that. There's like
Right.
that's
Okay.
funky.
So if you can hear us, give us a little thumbs up. Um, that would be great, or say yes. And if you happen to be on Facebook, that would be great because for whatever reason, we have been struggling with our Facebook connection for the last couple weeks. It's been weird, but hopefully we're getting everything sorted out. All right. It does look like I have sound on my part here. Okay, I have a wave, so I'm assuming Jane can hear us. All right, great.
Gonna mute that. That's fine.
All right, we are gonna talk. It's quilt month, so
Happy quilting!
right. In honor of quilting month, we're struggling.
Not with quilting, mind you, but
Yeah. Okay, you're seeing and hearing us on YouTube. Yeah, it appears that we're on Facebook, but it definitely was not at the same time that we usually go on. There is definitely a delay between the two. So, all right. Ooh, look it, it's
okay.
working.
Now I just need to get the right screen on.
All right.
This one,
That one. Yep.
and then present.
Perfect.
We'll go with that
All right, I think it's gonna work.
one.
Okay.
Whoop, whoop.
All right. So, today we're gonna talk about what happens when you finish the quilt top. So now you have a top. I have a top somewhere around here.
You do?
Yep,
I have a top. Isn't
yep,
it pretty?
I made it. Where's the one that I taught yesterday? How did I lose it already? I'll find it.
Oh, maybe it's on
eventually.
the cutting table, and you move the cutting table back. What do you think?
I did. It's very possible it is over there. Yes. So you finished your top, and now
That is
you
really
need
weird.
to get it quilted. So what do you do? Right? You have to finish the quilt. You have to find
How are you going to do the next
thank
step?
you.
Wow, I that's an interesting looking thing I got going on the top of my head. Woo.
All right. So I have a quilt top here, right? So I finished it. I pieced it. There's no backing and there's no binding to it. What do
It's a quilt top,
It's just a quilt top.
and I just don't love to free motion quilt. So now what do I do?
Now what do I do? Yeah. So you really have a couple of choices. You can quilt it yourself, and we'll talk about different options, or you can quilt by check.
It drives me crazy.
Which means you have found somebody that basically does quilting. Well, and they can free motion quilt. They can have a computerized quilting machine. They can
All
have
kinds
a
of different
variety
options for sure.
of different things. So Marge said our sound could use some help. Marge, can you be more specific?
I think I turned everything off on the other thing.
Mm-hmm. So
That's a little better.
is anybody else having sound issues? It's really great to not be able to tell. The only thing I can tell up there is that we have sound.
It is moving.
It is definitely moving.
And it's in the ranges that it normally is.
So you have a quilt. You need to get it quilted. And let's check here. We don't usually do that. We have movement here.
We sure do.
Any better, worse? Can turn that up a little bit. I don't know if that will help.
Testing, testing.
Right.
1, 2, 3.
All right. It's okay just when you turn your head and squish the mic. Okay. Well, I didn't have my mic on, so I'm really sorry. I was trying not to do that. Okay. So, hopefully now that we're on every place and we have everything, it'll all square, certainly not be squishy, and it'll all work itself out. Okay. So we're quilting.
We're quilting.
We're going to quilt. We're going to quilt either by quilting ourselves or by sending it out. So we have some fun options to share with you. Look at this. I'm really digging the new the rotary cutter
Yeah,
clip art.
that's an OFA. Right there, that is.
All
All right. So,
quilting choices.
and there is no judgment if you are not a free motion quilter. There is absolutely nothing wrong with sending that out to have somebody else do it.
None
It's
whatsoever.
what they do, it's what they're good at, and they would love your business. So,
Yes.
so don't ever feel like, you're doing something wrong
Right.
by doing that, because it's absolutely a very viable option. For
Totally.
Sure. So quilt by check, that means you're going to pay somebody else, or quilt it yourself. Those are there's
So your
that's
two
about
options.
it.
Yeah. Yep. And there's a myriad of ways that you can quilt yourself, and we'll talk about a bunch of different options here. We're next couple weeks after this, we're going to actually do a little bit of demonstrating. So we're actually going to be on the sewing machine, and we're going to talk about using a walking foot and using free motion quilting feet. We are going to give you like the test drive of those. So there you go. Another 100 and you get a nice quilting. Yes. So zero wrong answer here. Whether or not you choose to do it by yourself or you choose to have somebody else do it. It's no different than going to get your hair cut, really. I mean, right? That person, that's what they do for a living.
Right. I mean, how well do you do when you cut your own hair?
Yeah, I don't do a really good job.
I don't do so hot.
No.
I can make this part look good.
Most of the time.
But
I know, right? Hair is like one of those things, right?
No, but I meant like cutting. I could get, I could do bangs, and then I can make those look okay. And I can even do like a little face frame going on. But I can't see the back of my head.
No.
It makes it really hard. And when it happens when you look in a mirror?
It's backwards.
It's all backwards. Doesn't work very well.
It's kind of like what we look at here all the time, right? Everything is a little bit backwards.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter what you do, as long as you find something that works for you. And sometimes that means sending it out, and sometimes that means quilting it yourself. And sometimes you might choose like, I'm certainly capable of doing quilting, but if I have a king size quilt.
Right, the size of your project could determine. So maybe you do your own up to
a certain
size, and then you're like, nope, I'm out. Either my machine isn't big enough to have enough throat space to move that much fabric around, or I just don't want that stress. Right. And either it's okay, no matter what your answers are. Absolutely.
It's good to have choices. It's very good to have choices.
Hence the ponytail. Yeah, I'm about ready to ponytail.
All right, next slide. There we go. So if I'm going to quilt it myself, the pro to quilting it yourself is that it saves you money.
But not necessarily sanity.
Or time. It doesn't save you time. And if your time is money, then it doesn't necessarily save you money. But you're not paying, you're not handing over your hard-earned money. So it does save you that. The con would be that you have to, in order to get everything together, you have to do a little bit more work. So sometimes for me, I love the piecing process. I really enjoy that part. And by the time I get that finished, sometimes I'm over the project. Like
I'm ready to move on to something else.
I'm ready to go. I'm anxious to move on to a different project. I have completed this one, and I really need, Bob Evans really wants us to come in today. I really need to go have work on another project. I need to see some other fabric for a little while because I've been staring at this for a little while.
Stuff for a hot second, right?
So sending it out to be quilted gives me like a break, like a mental break from the project. And then when it comes back, I can do the binding part.
Right.
But some people feel like if they send it out, that means that they didn't make it. And there's no reason. You shouldn't feel guilty for sending it out, but you also shouldn't feel guilty for not sending it out, for feeling that way.
Absolutely.
Both of those are very valid.
They're valid feelings, and they're again, there isn't a wrong answer. It's literally the answer to this is how you are personally feeling about doing the work.
What you need.
And what you need to have that finished. You know, if it's just a small baby blanket and it's a gift for somebody, I can handle that. And then I did do all the work, and I have that feeling of, you know, this is 100% me, that I'm whatever. Nothing wrong with that. But maybe you absolutely hate even doodling. I mean, that's all I can do. I can't like do designs or anything like that. I just doodle. So it's going to just be a meandering all over the place, but there's no way I can't not cross my lines. So I got loops, and I, you know, and is that acceptable?
It is, totally.
Because
it also doesn't have to be free motion. It could be with a walking foot. It could just be straight lines or sort of wavy.
Yeah, absolutely. There's all different ways that you can do this. So it's literally whatever works best for you.
Yes.
So let's say, okay, I've made the decision. I'm going to quilt it myself.
Yes. So when we quilt ourselves, it's our responsibility to put the layers together. And there's a variety of different ways that you can do that. Some people prefer to use like a spray basting. Some people will pin. Some people don't do any of the above, and
they generally regret it when they're done.
Yeah, that makes me cringe just a little bit. And I realize that maybe, I mean, I don't feel like I'm old school on a lot of things, but I feel like I'm a little more traditional on, if I'm gonna quilt a quilt, I like to take the time to really lay out the back and then lay the layers together so that everything is kind of smoothed out. My back is a little bit more taut because it does kind of shrink in when you're doing the quilting stuff part like that. So I typically will lay everything out, and then I will pin baste my layers together.
Making sure your backing is nice and tight while doing so.
Yeah, and tight isn't necessarily like not stretched, but definitely taut, because I don't want it to go boop when I'm done, like we don't with embroidery.
We don't, just like same thing, and we also don't want to have extra fabric in there because then that creates some puckers.
Exactly. I've turned my project over and realized that I have like a little tuck or a pleat, and I'm disappointed because of course I don't notice it right away.
Right. You're either almost done or done by the time you get to the point where you can really start looking at what's going on back there.
Exactly. And we used to, like, when quilting, sending it out to be quilted was almost unheard of when I first started quilting. There were not many long armors. There's long armors all over the place now, and long arm machines are much more readily available, and people do that.
Yeah.
So you basically quilted everything. And we used to have, you used to start your quilting in the center of your quilt, and then you would basically move out. You would never start on one end and work over to the other side.
I really should have talked about hair today.
And I can remember very vividly, like my first quilt that I was working on, what I was doing is I was concerned that the fabric would shift in one direction. So I would sew down one direction, and then I would turn around and I would sew down the other direction, because in my mind, that was going to be helping with the shift. But what happened is when I got about 3/4 of the way out, I had one little area where the fabric just kind of did this little shift, kind of like if you've ever sewn a handle and you get a purse handle or something like that. You
just
get that
little skew.
Yep, you get that little twist that happens there. And I was really disappointed. My choice was live with it or rip out that one row of stitches and work on that. So now when I quilt myself, I pay attention to the back a lot more than I did when I first started, because I just didn't occur to me that would happen. And I don't necessarily do giant long rows first. I will tend to do like my shorter sections first and then go on long strips. That's just me personally. But a lot of like the quilting in our embroidery machine option starts in the left-hand corner.
It doesn't
and
necessarily
goes,
follow the rules you would think to follow for a free motion, quote unquote,
right.
type quilting or
Right.
quilt it yourself quilting.
So while I would say that there are lots of rules that you can follow, I would say that people break the rules more frequently now and still get good results.
Yes.
So I always say try a bunch of ways. So, you know, if the way that you thought you should do it doesn't work, then try something different. Maybe try a different direction, or don't go back and forth, go in one direction and then the other, and not maybe in a circular or a round area.
So some of those rules that you might have heard, start in the middle and work your way out.
Yes.
Don't start on one side and work your way to the right or to the left, because your fabric will shift and you won't end up quite the same.
Yes.
And you'll end up with those. So those are some things that are definitely out there.
Exactly.
There's definitely some validity to those things, but it depends on the project.
It does.
It depends on your project. It depends on the way that you are completing it. So, you know, are you doing it in your embroidery? Are you doing it, you know, because you're going to attack it from a different perspective depending upon how you decide to complete said quilting project.
Yes. Yes.
So,
regardless of how you choose to do it, I've seen a lot of people, I'm going to call it the noodle method. They take those pool noodles and they roll your noodles. Roll up their backing, their batting, and their top fabric on the noodle, and then they kind of unroll them and spread them out, and they do a little bit of spraying. I think that's a great option if you have something small. But if you have something,
the reality of a queen or king size,
it's not going to work for that. And there's still something to be said for making sure that that back is a little bit tighter than your batting and your top. And you can't do that when you don't have that stuck to something.
Right.
So
what do you do if you have a queen or a king?
Quilt by check.
There you go. So, but seriously, when you have something that large, trying to find a space to lay it all out, as we're talking about, is one of the challenges.
It definitely is.
You know, if you just have a table runner, well, it's really easy to find a table that it will fit on, and you can lay everything out.
Exactly.
And get that back nice and taut, and then lay the top pieces in pin.
That's right.
But even the act of moving from one side of a king size to another side of a king size, you're probably going to end up creating, you know, if you're trying to crawl on top of it, or, you know, I've done it on the floor. I've done it, you know, I mean,
move my furniture, tape it on my floor.
You know, I mean, I've done so many different things to try to make that all work out. And, you know, sometimes the way that you're doing it is actually causing more problems than you're helping.
Yep.
You know, a popular thing is to hang them on a wall. So you know, and then hang the next piece and so on and so forth. But that's a pretty big wall. So, you know, there's definitely different advantages. For me, part of the decision of what I'm going to do with it is how big is it? And if it's too big, it's going to somebody else.
If I can't put it on some sort of a table that is at least waist high or taller, and I can't tape it down, I'm out. I just if you're going to do it on the floor, it's a lot easier if you have a second person to hold one end while you tape, while you guys are both taping equal sides.
Because I've done that.
And then you pull it.
And then I pull it and the other side moves. And you're like, son of a gun, now I got to go back over there and do it. It's like, oh. So yes, for sure. Extra hands are going to be a help for that.
Extra hands are definitely
helpful. So now you guys are probably hearing a theme here.
Yes.
So, but
find a quilt buddy.
Find a quilt buddy. Absolutely. But yeah, you know, we're fortunate if we were trying to make something really big, we can push tables together here. And really get something and then roll it, take it home if that's what we wanted to do. Having a place to go and be able to do that is huge.
Exactly.
You know, so maybe you have, you know, I don't know that I would use your husband's workspace or, you know, those kinds of things out in the garage. That's probably not going to be ideal because the cleanliness of said area.
Not that your husband's not clean.
No, I didn't mean like that. But, you know.
Dust
sawdust
yeah,
and, you know,
debris.
whatever else might be part of that equation. You know, if you are going to use your floor, vacuum first.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to pick up everything on the floor. Don't ask me how I know that. That didn't occur to me until after I had something laid out once, and I was like,
oh no,
what were you thinking? So I'm sitting there with my roller,
right?
you know,
like a never-ending project.
Yeah, because of course you don't want to quilt all that in. So, but yeah, so size is definitely going to make a difference as to which direction that you might go. If you have the space for it, by all means, keep going at home if that's what you love to do.
Yes.
But don't feel guilty to choose to switch.
Exactly. All right. So when you quilt yourself, you have kind of 3 different styles of quilting that you can do. If you're wondering if you have to do one of these 3 things, if you are going to quilt a quilt, this is the one time I'm going to say absolutely yes. You need one of these tools. You don't need all of these tools, but you need one of these tools. Do not try to quilt your quilt with the standard foot on your machine.
That will not work.
It will not. You've got that thickness in those layers, and absolutely the top layer and the bottom layer are going to shift, and you are going to get down to the end of that first row of stitching, and you are going to have some either really big wrinkles or you are going to have something like that. But you definitely need to have one of these 3 tools. It doesn't matter which one you try. The walking foot is probably the easiest of everything to use because you can put that on your machine and you can basically just do straight lines.
Start sewing.
Or if you have a good walking foot, there are different styles of walking feet. We'll talk more about different styles of walking feet that are out there.
Table's a great choice.
But not all walking feet will let you move the needle position. So like using a decorative stitch doesn't always work.
Right.
So be mindful of the particular walking foot that you have. But that is probably the easiest option because it's feed dogs up and you're basically, it's just like sewing.
You're just sewing.
You're just turning and wrapping your quilt up.
Yep.
Then you've got free motion quilting. And free motion quilting is basically like drawing with your sewing machine. And we have a couple different free motion feet we're going to show you in a minute. And then we have ruler work. And ruler work is, again, it's a version of free motion quilting, but you are using specialized rulers that will help you create shapes if you can't draw.
Or maybe you can draw, but that doesn't mean you can sew and draw at the same time.
True.
That's not the same thing.
It is not the same thing. It is absolutely not the same thing. Lois says she uses her ping pong table. You know, funny story. My husband has been going into people's homes and doing work or inspecting almost the entire time that we have been together. And I would say 70% of the time that he goes into a home, when there is a ping pong table or a pool table in the downstairs area, he oftentimes comes home and says, well, that lady was a quilter because there was a quilt laid out on their, ping pong table or pool table. Yep. So it's always funny to say that. But many people, if you're a quilter and you have one of those, we oftentimes take advantage of. Absolutely. That's a big space. It's a flat space.
I'm going to use it.
Big flat space and easy to get to because of the height and you're not crawling around on your knees. So yes. What about all these people who claim to have done king or queen quilts with clear blue tiles?
Possible.
Let's finish talking about traditional quilting and then we will. I don't want to say circle back, but we're gonna talk about that in just a couple minutes, because that is kind of,
that's more an embroidery aspect, and we're talking about a little bit more traditional quilting type.
But we'll talk about that.
We'll talk about it.
I keep wanting to do this on mine, but it won't work.
That's okay. It's over here.
It is. All right, so ruler work.
This makes a difference.
This does. If you look at these 2 feet, you can clearly see that one is taller than the other. And the low shank foot, the one closest to us, the distance between where the bottom part of the foot is. So like the thickness of the band around the foot and the band around the foot on the high shank foot. They are different. And they are different for two reasons. One is because you have high shank and you have low shank rulers, and you do need to use the correct shank ruler with the correct foot, and then you need to use the correct foot with the correct
machine.
style machine. So
Yes.
the thickness of the ruler, if you tried to use a high shank ruler, you purchased a high shank ruler and you had a low shank foot on your machine because your machine is low shank. If you tried to move the ruler behind the foot, oh, you hit the button.
Oh, I didn't do that. I didn't mean to do that.
There
I hit my mouse pad. It's a very large mouse pad.
If you were to try to slide that ruler behind the foot, sometimes you have to go behind there. The ruler would actually be too thick, and it wouldn't go behind
underneath the actual part of the ankle portion of the foot.
Yes, and if you were using a low shank ruler, because it is thinner on a high shank machine, the ruler itself could slide right underneath the foot, and then you could stitch through it. So that is why there's
specifically high and low shank rulers and specifically high and low shank feet.
Yes.
And you do need to keep them together.
That is right.
So what if I had a low shank machine and I bought a ruler foot and I bought way too many rulers that went along with it. And then I changed machines and I switched to a high shank machine. Can I use my adapter?
If you have a brother or a baby lock, you can for sure. We're very lucky that we have the ability
adapter to switch those things
off. Yeah, so you could use that original low shank foot that you had using the adapter for your brother or your baby lock, and then it would make your high shank machine a low shank machine, and that would work.
And the rulers would still work with that foot.
That is right.
So that is the only workaround to making that jump from a high to a low.
Yes. If you were to have done the opposite and you had purchased all high shank stuff and you moved over to a low shank foot, I'm sorry.
There's no secret
no
door on that one.
No. All right, so you can use rulers. Ruler work it's
fun.
It is. It's a lot of fun. It can feel like a little bit.
There's a little prep to starting it.
Ruler work doesn't make my stitches look better, but it makes my designs look cooler.
Yes. So your stitches are still up to you, how fast you're hitting the foot pedal and how fast you're moving everything underneath the needle.
Exactly.
That's not going to magically fix itself if you're using a ruler foot versus if you're using a free motion foot.
Exactly.
You still have to have that groove going on between you and your machine.
You do.
However, there's lots of really fun, she probably has the wrong foot. Sorry. The ruler foot would give you the ability to do, with the different rulers, circles that are good circles, not, that's not a circle, that's an oval, or not even a very good oval. Straight lines even, that
straight lines are very hard
to do free motion wise.
Yes.
Especially when you have a heavy quilt in the sandwich and whatnot, where you might be great stitching straight lines on quilting pieces and things like that. It's not the same when you're actually quilting it versus when you're piecing it.
It is definitely not the same.
So there's actually a straight ruler, and it's a thing. There's a reason that it's there. But circles, waves, feathers.
Yeah.
So sorry, pardon me. So there's a lot of really fun shapes, flowers, and different things that you can do.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the outside of the box. It's not really what it was designed for, but if I do this and this, I can make that, in which there's not technically a ruler for, or something like that.
There isn't.
So there's a lot of really fun things that you can do here. It opens some doors.
Right.
There are some people that are extremely talented with free motion quilting.
Yes.
And can make feathers and circles and all kinds of whatevers. They can look at something and go, oh, do, and
Yes.
then it's exactly what they envisioned.
Yeah.
I have great visions in my head,
Right. The
but they don't
execution.
usually look like that when I'm done on the
Yeah.
quilt.
There's a quilter out there. I believe she actually quilts on an APQS machine. So and she's a nationally known quilter. Her name is Natalie Bonner, Bonner. I follow her on Instagram, and she does the most beautiful quilting. And she's got one arm on that long arm, and she's got her little rulers out there, and she's just like she's coloring with a coloring book. And every time I watch it, I'm like, oh, I gotta watch that again. Like, I'm just in
How did that happen?
I'm in awe. I feel like it's like trying to talk and chew bubblegum at the same time. Like, I'm okay at it, but sometimes it doesn't work the way I think it should.
Sometimes I spit all over something.
So it's so fun to watch her just create these things. And she always does these custom quilts, and and she just the work. And I'm always like, oh man, I want to be her when I grow up.
It is a beautiful thing, right? Is it Patsy Thompson?
Patsy Thompson.
Patsy
yes.
Thompson is a beautiful free motion quilter.
Yes.
We've actually had her here for some classes, and she's got different things that you can
Yes.
take from her, and it's been years and years and years, but
Yeah.
she's just like, oh, I'm gonna do this, and you're like, you're gonna do what? And
Yeah.
she says it, she looks at it, and she does it. Her brain can
Yes.
path out
Exactly.
how I'm gonna get from point A to point B, and my path is gonna look like this, and that's exactly what it looked like when she was done, and
Right.
she ended up exactly where she said she was going to.
Exactly.
And it's amazing. So it is definitely a skill that you can improve upon and learn. Is that going to happen the first time you sit down? No.
Probably not.
Even with a ruler, it takes getting used to the two pieces together, holding the ruler, moving the machine, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, or moving your fabric.
Moving your fabric,
on a regular sewing machine.
All of those things are a practice learned technique.
Yes.
It is certainly not something I've never met anybody that just sat down and went, I've never done this before, and then started doing their thing, and it just magically started working. I've never seen that.
No.
So if that didn't happen for you and you were expecting it, it's okay. You're not alone.
You're not alone.
That is pretty normal. You do have to, work into the comfortable, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on as well.
Yes.
So ruler work feet are available for all of our Brother and Baby Lock machines. They're available for pretty much most machines out there. There are
I would say
specialty ones available depending upon what your machine is.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's something out there that
I
there's
would
not
say,
one. But
yeah, anything that was made in the last 10 years. So if you have a
That's fair.
machine
Yeah.
that was made in the last 10 years, there is a good chance that you can get a ruler foot for your machine. So Steady makes Westerly rulers.
Westerly rulers.
And they make Westerly ruler feet, and you can get a Westerly version foot for almost all makes and models.
Almost all
of
makes and
machines.
models. So, there's the high and there's low, but there's also special.
Yes.
So there's definitely a lot of availability out there, and it's a lot of fun.
It is.
It's a lot of fun.
It's also a lot of fun to collect them.
I do that well, but I'm a great collector. I'm really good at buying things and putting them in a box. I'm really, really good at that. So walking feet, you love your walking feet.
I do love my walking foot. I have, it's not a secret that I came from a different brand. So I sold and sewed on Bernina's for many years. And before that, sold and sewed on Viking machines. And, the industry has changed with what's the current thing and what's not. But a walking foot has been the standard practice for many years, and it has been called many different names. So a dual feed foot, a plaid matcher. So it's been called all kinds of different things. And originally that is what the walking foot for home sewing machines was designed to match plaids, because when it first came out, that's what people were doing. They were sewing and plaid was a big thing.
Right.
And
so they'd set it all up that their lines matched, but then they sewed and it didn't because it shifted.
Yes. So so that is where that word came from. But essentially what a walking foot does is it gives you a set of feed dogs that is going to be now on top of your fabric. So it allows the fabric to move through even, which
Right.
is why we also call it an even feed foot. So many different words, all the same meaning.
Right. So there's different kinds.
Yes.
There's different qualities.
Yes.
You can get a pretty inexpensive one that's going to do a generic job.
Yes.
If you spend a little bit more, you're going to get a better grip
Yes.
and feed.
Yes.
So, I don't want to say you get what you pay for, but you kind of get what you pay for on this one.
Yeah.
It is, if you buy one of the $30 random things, there's plastic parts, there's, and we all know what happens with plastic parts,
Right.
So
And there's a lot of working pieces that go into a walking foot. So
there is a lot of moving parts.
if you invest in like the one that we have up here, you can move that whole folder if you would like.
I think I'm just going to do this.
Do that? Okay.
And then I won't touch it.
I obviously wasn't planning. Yeah.
No.
So you invest in a good walking foot, and that walking foot will probably last you multiple machines. If you buy an inexpensive walking foot, you will probably replace that walking foot more than one time in the lifetime of your machine, especially if you do, let's say, even if you only do 2 or 3 quilts a year. An inexpensive walking foot, you could bank that you might get 3 quilts out of it. Maybe not table runner or baby size, but 3 maybe full size quilts out of that before something inside of there will wear down.
Yep.
Or the plastic or something will just come apart.
On that entry level one, we'll call it.
Yeah.
The top feed is all plastic. The grip that goes on your needle bar is all plastic.
Yes.
And that's how those things work. So if the plastic is wearing down, things aren't going to move like they're supposed to.
Exactly. So it doesn't
So
grip.
you'll get some variance of, some possible shifting, and it won't do it the good job that it did the first time you put it on the machine.
Yes.
And there is not a fix once those things start to happen. You can't bring it to us and say, hey, could you just make this work like it did when I bought it? Unfortunately, that's not a thing.
It's $30.
It's $30. Here's the new one, So, or you could invest in a little bit nicer one off the get, and it will last you much, much longer.
Exactly.
So the one that you see there closest to us here, that one is, what's the name? Is that the
That's
deluxe?
the dynamic.
I can never remember. It starts with a D.
A D, yes.
Starts with a D. So it's the dynamic, and that one has different feet or soles depending upon what goes on the bottom of the foot.
Exactly, how
Hence
you
the
word
sole.
that. So you can see in the picture, there's like one on the tool itself, and then there's one in front of it. So the original one comes with an open toe version, which is what's actually on the foot in this picture, and then the standard version, which is kind of like our standard J foot.
Yep.
So there is
not quite as open in the center.
It's not. Yeah, you've got the metal.
A little
inside.
bit more metal going on.
Exactly. And then you can buy an add-on accessory pack for
and that
it.
one has a 1/4 inch and a stitch in the ditch.
Yes,
Okay.
and a quilting bar.
Right.
So that's an investment. You can expect to spend probably, if you were to get the foot and the additional foot package, you're going to be right around the $200 price point ish, give or take a little bit, depending on if you bought your machine here or not.
Fair. Yep.
So, you can expect to invest in that. And again, you can expect that foot will last you a very, very, very long time and will move up for different machines. Most walking feet are low shank. There are very few high shank walking feet that are out there. There are no brother or baby lock high shank walking feet.
Not like the one on the left.
Not like the one on the left.
No. Now, the one on the right is a whole nother animal.
It is. And that is the digital dual feed or the Move It Foot, depending on which brand you're talking about. But essentially what this does is you see that little cord in the back, plugs into the back of machine, and then it is belt driven. So there is a conveyor belt on there that that does that. So Jane was asking how much for the add-on. I think the add-on is like $100 or close.
Somewhere in
they're
that
pretty
range.
close to being the same for the
two different pieces.
right, not exactly the same.
No, the foot is more.
Yeah.
But
it's right around that.
It's right around 200 for the two together, but I don't remember the exact breakout.
I feel like
I think it's like
129.99
or something, and 130.
Yeah, something like
somewhere in that range.
We do have them on our website under feet. You can probably just type in dynamic walking foot and find it. But
so like the additional feet available for the standard walking foot, there are additional soles available for the digital dual feed Move It foot.
Yes, it's a mouthful. Isn't
it is a mouthful. That one is been updated, so there's a compact version. If you've had one previously, there is a little bit smaller. I definitely don't know that it's worth the expense to buy a new one if you have the old one. The likelihood of the changes making enough difference for you, I don't know.
I feel like this is a love it or hate it foot.
It's a love it or hate it relationship.
And there really isn't a middle ground.
Tells the machine that you're using that foot.
Exactly.
It will gray out any stitch that it does not let you stitch with it. The new compact version allows you to stitch with more stitches than the original version.
Right.
Because of some of the changes that were made in it. Again, is that enough? Most of the time I'm doing a straight stitch, so that doesn't really matter to me. However, it is smaller, hence the compact name, so you can fit your quilt better underneath in the back because it's kind of bulky in the back of the machine. So the new one is a little bit smaller, and you don't tend to get the jam up going on behind the foot for that. But it is a walking foot on steroids because it is belt driven, so it's literally pulling your fabric with that conveyor belt that's built into the foot, and you do just snap on those soles.
Absolutely.
So it comes in quite a few of the upper tiered machines, and it is available for purchase separately.
Yes.
I'm sure shocks everybody. All right. I'm like, it didn't
There's
change.
A little bit of a delay.
I moved the computer farther away, and now the delay's longer. So these are a couple of those different free motion feet that we talked about. We said there was different kinds of free motion feet, and there certainly are. So the one on the left and the one in the middle do approximately the same thing. You just have a little bit different view of what's going on. One has more plastic on it than the other.
Yep. Yeah, the open toe one tends to be, not always, but a lot of times it is a metal version. And I think it's because it's hard to clip out that plastic and have it be stable.
Though I have seen some of the older style closed toe versions with the space between those red lines, they're removed. So you can occasionally get an open toe foot that looks like the one on the left.
Yes, but if it doesn't, if it looks on, it's the same. The concept is
the same. They're a hopping foot. They're going to move along with your needle and give you a, even if it is the closed toe, it's clear, so you can still see what's happening pretty easily there. And then the open toe foot, of course, being open, should be able to see what's happening.
Exactly. And
what's there. And
vice versa. Like sometimes you can find metal closed toe versions. This isn't
it's not the only way. It's just there's an open toe and there's a closed toe, and what
metal.
They can vary between there. The Echo foot, on the other hand, is definitely a different thing. So what you're doing with that is going to be a difference.
Yep. And how big the Echo foot will change a little bit by brand that you're using. But essentially you have rings around that. So the picture that you're showing on the screen there, they're kind of like outlining around that tulip. And what they're doing is they're using the rings that are, they might be a little bit hard to see on this, but it's kind of like cup shaped, almost like a dish, like a dish.
So we've got an inner circle and a middle circle, and then you have the outside edge.
Yes.
I don't know if you guys can see that blue.
Can you
there.
make your screen, if you pinch your screen, does it get bigger?
Sort of.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
So there you can see those little circles on that foot. That's what we're talking about. So from the center needle position, you have basically 1/4 of an inch away from center needle position.
Yeah, mine's over there too.
It's really loud over here, sorry.
Sorry.
And then you've got an 1/8 inch mark, and then you've got another 1/4 inch mark. So you've got different marks so that you can kind of gauge how far away you want to echo.
Right. And because it's clear, you can align the line that's in the foot, depending upon if it's the edge, great. If it's one of the inner lines, then you would look through the foot at the line to your previous stitch line or the edge of your flower in this case.
Exactly. So that's a really great option.
See if we can. Okay.
Okay. So tips for quilting yourself. We talked a little bit about taping or pinning your backing taunt. This helps prevents the pleats and the puckers as you quilt. I like to use.
You use the bent ones?
I don't usually use the safety pins that I use when I pin my quilt together. This is important. You definitely want to use a safety pin. Do not use like a straight pin.
Your straight pins are not going to stay put, not to mention you're going to hurt yourself.
I promise you will impale yourself.
Multiple times.
You will say very bad words. You'll be like, she did not tell me that I should not use these pins. She just said pin.
Don't use your standard sewing straight pins. You do want to use a safety pin.
Yes.
And that way, one, they'll roll just like, when you're putting it up onto your table or storing it or whatever. But where if you use a straight pin and you're it'll actually push the pin out of position and then it falls out and then you have loose pins and that's not a good thing either. And even if they don't fall out, while you're working the quilt, you'll run your hand into the open end of that pin and it does not feel good. We've all stabbed ourselves with sewing pins. They are sharp.
Yes.
So don't do that. So tape or pin using safety pins, please.
Yes.
And that'll help to prevent you getting the pleats, the puckers, and whatnot.
And I like to use small brass pins. The smaller, the better. It is a pain in the butt to actually clip the pins, but it substantially leaves a smaller hole in the quilt.
Because they don't shift.
Because they don't shift, and brass does not rust.
Yep.
And sometimes the safety pins that you get these days, everything I feel like you get is just crappy sometimes. And it does not take a lot of moisture to make a safety pin start to rust.
And if that's in your quilt, what's going to happen?
It does. So if you know that you're going to pin it, and then this is going to be a project that you're maybe working on over the course of a little while, it's not like you're not going to bang this out on Saturday and Sunday. This is going to be like a couple of weeks worth of project.
If you know they're going to sit there, you don't want to use just standard pin because you can get rust in even a short period of time.
So if that's all you have, do your due diligence and definitely pay attention to what's going on. Do a little safety check on those pins because you definitely don't want
those
that
stains
to
in your
rub
quilt.
off.
Nope.
No, it's almost I think it's darn near impossible to get that out. Yeah, you just by the time you're done rubbing that to get it out, you've basically just rubbed a hole in your fabric. So,
brass work really well.
They do.
All right, practice first. So especially if you're not comfortable, or maybe it's been a hot second since you've done it.
Right.
Don't anticipate that you're just, like we said before, going to sit down and it's going to be perfect, because there is a marriage that happens between you and your machine when you're free motion quilting, and you want to make sure that you are in the groove, if you will. So make a small sandwich. I think I covered ours up. This is super small.
Right.
But fat quarter size is a great practice size. Take a couple fat quarters and some batting, pin them, spray baste them, whatever, that small spray basting will probably suffice for your practicing. And doodle.
Yes.
Get that, and then check. Do a small section, stop and check, because you don't have to worry about burying your tails or anything on a practice. Don't worry about that. Just get the feel that you're looking for down. Make sure that your tensions look at the back. Are you getting the eyelashes? Are you getting, good look, bad look, and make the adjustments that you need on your machine to make sure that you're getting what you're looking for. So please don't just sit down and do your entire quilt and then, even worse, never look at the back before you're already done.
Exactly. I mean, and even if you're not free motion quilting, even if you're using a walking foot, grab the thread that you're going to use. I mean, it's rare that I complete a quilt and I don't have some scraps left over. You know, so put some of those scraps together with your batting that you're choosing and your backing, and try out your thread. Make sure you like the look of it.
You could even have a whole extra square. I certainly have, you know, when you're making, depending upon how you're doing it, you could have an entire square that's extra, and you know you're going to have the same fabrics, so you'll know that the threads are going to look like they're supposed to look. If you get that sample looking right, you're good to go. You are good to go. And one of the things that we didn't mention that I did want to mention about when you're quilting yourself, this is the thing that I see people do a lot. They don't make their pieces big enough. Now, I realize that obviously this is a very small piece. This is a miniature version. But even if you're quilting yourself, in order to really see what's going on underneath everything, you really need your backing should be larger than your batting, and your batting should be larger than your quilt top. Even if it's just an inch bigger than this, it definitely needs to be larger, because this is how you prevent this from happening. So, you know, if everything is the same size, it is really easy for a little corner or something like that to get tucked in while you're quilting. And that's very frustrating. You've never done that, have you? I've totally never done that before. Trust me when I say it's better to have this just a little bit bigger. Yep. So even if you are doing it at home, you still need to have that backing and batting larger than your top. It doesn't have to be as large as it would be. Not as large as if you're sending it out. Right. But you still need to have some extra room to hang on to. You also need to be able to get all the way to the edges. And if they're matching, you're going to end up sewing on air, which doesn't end up working out so hot. It does not. So having that size outside of the top is definitely going to help you out. Yes. So practice, practice, practice. And then when you're comfortable. When you're comfortable. So I added this one. Yes. Do you like wine? Do you like wine? I like wine every once in a while. I didn't like wine, and I think I had my first glass of wine when I was quilting, actually. And this isn't necessarily our tip. This is you'll hear this all over the place. There's the rumor that if you are more relaxed, your free motion quilting will turn out better. So if you're super tense, it's really hard to get smooth, consistent stitches, and it's hard to get, you know, the fabric to move freely. Yes. Where if you're a little more relaxed, all of those other things can flow a little bit easier. So, you know, relaxing, this is not how you want to free motion quilt. Right. For sure. You know, all tense with your arms up, pulled in, and your shoulder, you know, you need to be relaxed so that everything's flowing freely. Absolutely. There's a fine line between being relaxed and being like, I don't care, because tomorrow you will care. You will. So we're not suggesting you drive drunk. All right. So don't drive drunk with your. Tomorrow they're like, why did she, this is gross. Right. So just one little bit glass. Just a little bit, not the whole bottle. Okay. So exactly. But free motion quilting and music. Music helps a lot. Yep. I cannot free motion quilt and watch TV. Fair. Because when I free motion quilt and I watch TV, my stitches look awful. It kind of goes with the ebb and the flow of when it's on the show, or when it's exciting, I'm not paying enough attention of what's in front of you. I always want to be looking forward, right? Not looking right where I'm at. So kind of where I'm going, and that totally messes with my rhythm. So I find that music helps me be more consistent with my stitches, almost like I'm quilting to the beat of the fabric. Right. Absolutely, because you're flowing along with it versus starting and stopping. Yes. And the starting and the stopping is really not great when you're doing free motion. You see the sharp edges of when you stop and when you pick that up. So whenever possible, you want to stop in a seam or on an edge or something like that. Don't just stop and then pick it back up in the middle, because you'll see where that was. Exactly. And if you're
playlist is like my drive playlist, you might want to create one for quilting. So
Maybe
you don't want to
not hard, heavy. No, I'm just kidding.
right. You don't want to have like rap, heavy metal, and then like Carrie Underwood.
Yeah, you want to keep a consistent beat through that, or you will actually see a difference in your stitches for
or
sure.
yeah, you're gonna be like,
bang y'all ahead. No,
yeah.
Don't do that.
So find something that makes it so that you're cool, calm, and collected while you're quilting. Audrey is asking what causes the eyelash look. Well, the real simple answer is usually needle to thread combination. Your eyelashing is almost always on the bottom, which means it's almost always has to do with your upper thread.
Yep.
If your problem is on the bottom, the problem is your top thread. And if the problem is on the top of your fabric, it is likely your bobbin thread. What exactly that problem is, your needle could be wrong, your tension could be off. The thread that you have in the top and the bottom aren't balanced. Could be the wrong type of needle.
So that being said, do you always have to free motion with the same thread in the top and the bobbin?
You do not.
You do not?
No.
Well, how do you fix that if they're not the same?
With a little bit of wine.
And a little bit of a tension adjustment in general.
Yeah.
That's, you need the amount of pull needs to be adjusted so that you're not seeing your top thread on the bottom or your bobbin thread on the top.
Exactly. So having worked on multiple different brands of machines before, one of the really cool things about Brother and Baby Lock is that our bobbin cases are actually pretty inexpensive. So for about $30, you can have an extra bobbin case.
And you can have that set.
You can. So I have...
Or you can set it. It doesn't mean you have to bring it in. You can do this yourself.
I have a free motion quilting bobbin case. And then I have a sewing bobbin case. And then I have, I'm going to quilt in my embroidery machine bobbin case. And then I have them doing regular embroidery bobbin case. And I keep them in a little bag with a little word.
With the label of what it is.
Because they all look exactly the same.
They look exactly the same. It's just the amount of tension that's on that tension screw is adjusted. And it's based on the type of threads that you're stitching with for those different types of quilting.
Yes. And what I want my finished outcome to be.
Right.
When I'm quilting or sewing, I want a balanced stitch. I want the top and the bottom to look almost as good on the top and the bottom as they do on the bottom and the top. You don't want to see that
pull through anywhere.
No, but of course when I'm doing traditional machine embroidery, I want that top thread to be pulled all the way to the bottom because I don't want to see any of that bobbin thread. And there's no way that I can have a bobbin case that does that also be a bobbin case that balances my thread.
Not without a lot of work in between each time.
Right. You can't it's
no. It's not smart.
It's not,
and it's totally worth the $35, $40, whatever depending upon your range of, anywhere from $30 to $40, Brother or Baby Lock, to get that adjustable case, depending upon which machine you have. And that is definitely, now that said, we don't carry like 50 of them here. So if you like 3 more, that's great. We can take care of you, but we may have to order them. Tony's gonna be like, what did you girls do?
Right. But it is nice to be able to have an extra one and
most definitely,
and be able to just start in that place. And I think people I feel like I use a variety of different colors of thread. I do tend to use the same style of thread. I don't tend to quilt with something that is super duper thick.
Right.
I tend to quilt with, occasionally I will use like a 30 weight, but mostly it's 40 or 50 weight.
Mostly it's going to be 40 to 50, right.
So I'm not changing the weight of my thread drastically between the top and the bottom. I like to use different colors, and I like to use them as the same brand because I feel like it's a little easier to adjust that, but I definitely am a firm believer in using different colors. It doesn't always have to match.
Right. So long story short, eyelashes are caused by your machine to thread setup. And just a little bit of tweaking can make that be exactly what you need it to be. what she's saying is you're using different bobbin cases to preemptive strike not having eyelashes and
having a more balanced look.
having that more balanced look and kind of helping. You can still make some minor adjustments with tension in the machine or something like that, or your speed. Because if you like whip something really hard, you're going to get an eyelash no matter how great your settings are. If you all of a sudden change direction and pull everything, that thread can't keep up with your speed of changing the direction.
You've also got the thickness of your batting, and as the foot is trying to go in and make that stitch, if you're going too fast, it doesn't actually complete
the whole stitch, which
so
then causes an eyelash.
Like skips one stitch, and that gets that. All right, so the foot that was in my luminaire is the she meant bobbin. Okay, bobbin case. Technically, yes. Technically, there is an embroidery bobbin case and a sewing bobbin case. The embroidery bobbin case is the one that has the green like Loctite on the screw.
Yep.
And that is preset for the finishing touch bobbin thread. And the other bobbin case is not as tight, and the screw is not glued, so you can adjust it to be tighter or looser as you need it. It also has, we call it the bingo bobbin case. There's a little
colored,
when you look inside the bobbin case
on the little metal part that's at the bottom.
Some colored dot, a lot of purple.
They're either purple or red in general.
Yeah.
But that's what we lovingly call the bingo bobbin, and that one's adjustable.
Yes.
And you can turn the tension screw to be what you need it to be. So that's what you have so many different ones of.
That's what I have, so many of those, yes.
All right. So, we talked about this at the beginning. There is, again, absolutely nothing wrong with this, whether it be a table runner or whether it be a king size quilt. It does not matter. You do not have to quilt just because it's a small project. You can absolutely send it out. We are a drop-off location for 3 different long arm companies here.
Yes.
And we've got them listed here. So there's again, not a right or wrong here. If you come in and you're like, okay, hey, this is what my project is, this is what I want, we will give you recommendations.
Yes.
Where we would suggest that you go.
Exactly.
But you might fall in love with one of them, and that's just what you stick with, and there's nothing wrong with that either. So
yeah, they don't all of them will do overall quilting, but
they don't all custom.
But they don't all do custom, and some of them can't work with a king size quilt.
So again, we'll ask what it is that you're looking for, and then we'll help you find the one that is your best fit.
The best fit for you, yes.
And that is going to, you're going to drop it off. We'll let them know that it's here.
Yep.
They'll pick it up, and then they'll bring it back here, and then you would just pay by either cash or check. And we would get that to the quilter when they come back the next time.
Yes.
So that is generally going to be what, a week to 2 to 3, depending upon what your project is and how big their wait list is, and before you get there.
Yeah, I feel like 2 weeks to a month, depending on when you drop it off to when you pick it up, is normal. Every once in a while, if it's something like out of the ordinary, maybe it's custom quilting or something like that.
Obviously going to take a little bit longer if it's a custom, because it's not just push a button and go. They're actually having to plan out all of their different pieces and things like that.
Exactly. So ish.
Yes. Exactly. But again, we are happy to help you find the right one for you, or you can certainly contact them individually and take care of that yourself too. If you decide to quilt by check, we talked a little bit about the sandwich concept and the sizing. Very, very important, because they will send it back not finished.
Right.
If you do not have your backing fabric and batting, if you are providing your own, 8 inches longer and wider.
Right.
Than your top.
So if your quilt is 60 inches square, then your quilt top would need to be
your quilt back.
Your quilt top is 60 inches, and your quilt back needs to be 68 inches, so that you have 8 inches all the way around.
Right. So that would end up being 4 inches on each side.
Yes.
Over the size of your top.
Yes.
as I said, you can either provide your batting, which of course it needs to be the same, just like what we were talking about. It also needs to be oversized based on your top. You can provide that, or you can purchase that direct from your quilter, and then they will figure that out on your own.
That's right.
That's my choice generally. I'm like, yeah, just put batting in there. I'm good. This is the kind I want. And what do you have available? This is what I want. And then I very often, depending upon what it is that I'm doing, I'll let the quilter choose the design versus going through the book and hemming and hawing. And the quilters know what's in their collection. They know what they have.
Yeah.
And they could look at your fabric and be like, I have a castle that's just like that castle. I'm going to use that one, where I might not realize that, and I might pick clouds or something else. And the castle would have looked way cooler.
Exactly.
They know that. So a lot of times I will put quilter's choice in there, but you do have the ability to choose what design, of course. Or just a meander too. There's nothing wrong with that either.
No, you can absolutely do that. I often let them choose the quilting and the thread.
And the thread color. So you can choose your thread color, or you can say just you choose it. Look at what you've got and what's going to look the best, and don't make it dark or something like that. You can do that, and that's really they're really good at that, and it's what they do. So
it is what they do. The only thing that I would say is that if you are bringing your own batting to the quilter, be kind to the quilter and do not bring the least expensive batting that you can purchase from Joann's. If it has the words mountain mist in it, your quilter may actually say to you, I'm sorry, I can't use that. When you open that up, it's not very even. It's got it's thick and thin, and
you can
and
see through it in some areas and not in others, and the consistency is definitely going to show in the finished product.
Right. You definitely you spend a lot of money on this. Don't
shortchange yourself at this point.
Right. On the $10 or $15 extra that it might cost for you to get one that's a little bit better. It'll last a lot longer. And
you won't end up with getting like a real heavy spot as you wash it, because that's what's there's nothing there for the stitches to hold into,
or it actually just kind of falls apart inside
or it falls apart, and then you don't end up with anything in there.
Falls up in that particular area.
And it does not look. You don't want that to happen after you've done all of this work.
You don't.
So make sure that you don't cheap out on that one. It's definitely worth putting a little extra into that.
And we do carry batting at the shop, and one of the reasons we carry the particular brand of batting that we carry is it has a lot of really important information on the front cover of it. And one of those really important things is how far apart or how close my quilting has to be. And if you're quilting yourself and you've got big blocks and you want to just be able to go around the outside of that block, if your batting says it's okay to quilt up to 10 inches apart, you're going to be in luck. But if your batting doesn't tell you that,
or 4 inches,
or it says only 4 inches, and you quilt way out here and you don't get close enough, when you wash that, what's going to happen is it's going to start pilling inside, and it's going to start disintegrating, and it will make your quilt feel lumpy and bumpy.
It's basically telling you how much support it needs to maintain
its
integrity.
Yep.
So, and that's one of the reasons that we carry that for quilting, is because it says right on the package what you need to do.
So there's no guesswork.
So there is not any guesswork, whether you're sending it to the quilter or whether you're doing it yourself. Either way. So for sure, definitely a thing. So we started a little late. We are over a little.
We were going to circle back just really quickly about
circling back to clear blue tiles, or not necessarily always clear blue tiles, but embroidery quilting versus sewing quilting.
Yes.
So could you do that?
Totally doable.
Absolutely doable. I mean, I think that for me, the smaller projects are more fun.
Yes.
There's a lot of marking to be done. I would definitely be using multiple tile sizes so that I could have them down and then still see my layout as I'm going. But that's king size with clear blue, you absolutely could do it. Absolutely. There's no reason that you couldn't. But it would be some time consuming.
I would probably just pick an edge-to-edge design, like from Emily Scott or however we say that name. She's like the edge-to-edge embroidery queen, and I would do something like that.
For that large of a project.
I were going to do something that
Yes.
large, yes. She has a really great system that's very doable for lots of people, and you don't have to necessarily mark on your project where
Correct.
you want
It's
things
based
to be.
on where you've stitched versus necessarily
Yeah,
just a placement.
just a placement, yes.
So have people done it? Absolutely. Could you do it? Absolutely. It would not be my first choice.
Yeah, and I think the actual the actual clear blue tiles instructions, I think it recommends for like it doesn't go that tall, that big. I think it's like maybe a twin size or something, or 60
I honestly
by 60.
don't remember, but that's a lot of marking.
It is.
It's a lot of marking that you would need to do, because each one of those sections you're drawing the crosshair for, and you're drawing the edge of each of the tiles, and then you're going to move it, and then you're going to do the same thing. So if you picture, I mean, what the largest thing we have right now is what, an 8 by 12?
Yeah.
So 8 by 12 times king size is a
112
whole
inches.
lot of squares.
Yeah.
There is a newer set coming that you're going to have larger design options, so larger tiles. That I might think a little bit more, okay, that's less times that I'm, rehooping. And I definitely wouldn't be using my magnetic hoop and just sliding things around as I was going. But you're going to need, again, that large space to lay it all out. And you would be drawing, you'd have to mark the whole quilt. I mean, I suppose you wouldn't have to, but I don't know that I would want to start it without planning the whole thing.
Right.
And that is a lot of planning. So could you, yes, have people? I'm sure they have. It would.
Some people have more time.
And maybe better system. I don't have anywhere I could lay that out and comfortably to make that happen personally.
No, me either.
Outside of here, and I don't have time when I'm here. So, but I do think that.
Yeah.
I don't think that they're lying when they said they did it, or whatever words you want to use, or misrepresenting what they've done. But it wouldn't be my first choice for sure.
Right. Definitely not mine. But you could
you
definitely do it.
make it happen if you wanted to, for sure.
Dime has a product that, like a suspension quilt system that you can do to hold the weight of it.
They do.
Which is really nice. And they've got like a lightweight version, and then they've got like a
They've got a small
one.
and a large, if you will, dependent upon the size of your project.
Yeah, doing a king size quilt in your embroidery machine, it is doable, but it's heavy. A king size quilt is just heavy by nature. It's a lot of fabric, and it's batting, and then all of that stuff. So the more weight you're applying to your embroidery machine, the more risk you have of it not actually sort of going and doing exactly what you want it to do. It's super easy for it to get caught on the corners.
And our embroidery arms are not designed to have that much weight pulling against them. So it's also easy to get dislodged from your correct position. Yes. So your zero access shifts. If the weight of it is pulling, you can actually move out of the correct position in your embroidery hoop. So it definitely, there's a lot that can be done. With our new magnetic hoops, they are better. But if you don't have a way to support some of that weight, even the greatest grip magnetic hoop can still get pulled out of position from the weight of a very, very large quilt.
Yep.
So embroidery is definitely an option for quilting, for sure. And just like anything else, it's easier if your project is smaller. But
definitely don't make that your first one.
No, I mean, I did the edge to edge. Gosh, how big was that? It was like 80 by 90, I think. I mean, it was a good size. And I did that, and it was a challenge. And I had my leaf open, and so, I mean, I was supporting the weight as much as possible, and it was still a challenge. But I just, I had to do it. So, I didn't do clear blue tiles. I did the built-in, but it's a lot. It was definitely a challenge, and I feel like I knew what I was doing. So,
yeah, it's a big project to undertake.
It's definitely a big project, for sure.
All right.
So, all right. I know we went over. Thanks for hanging with us. Sorry we were a few minutes late today. We've been just having some technical weird things. So apologies for that. And again, thanks for hanging. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share to everybody that you know.
That's right.
And next week we're going to talk more quilting. So, did I read what next week was? I don't remember.
We're gonna play with the feet.
We're going to actually show you the feet and play and rulers too. I think was on next week's. So we'll see you there for that. Bye guys. Thanks.